Hi, welcome to Healthy Kingston, a health promotion and wellness program of the Kingston Board of Health. I'm Janet Wade, your host. Well, we've all been hearing about EEE, and our community is currently at a high risk for exposure to Eastern equine encephalitis, better known as EEE. It's a mosquito-borne disease. What we know about it is there's a cycle between mosquito and infected birds, where the mosquito will bite the infected bird and then turn around and bite a person. The Centers for Disease Control also tells us that horses can be infected by these mosquitoes as well. Symptoms usually come between 3 to 10 days after you've received an infected bite. They include fever, which is usually anywhere from 103 to 106 degrees, a stiff neck, headache, and a lack of energy. People who are over 50 years of age and less than 15 years of age are most at risk for developing severe EEE. So if you detect any of these symptoms, please get in touch with your doctor right away. EEE is not a contagious disease, so it's not passed from person to person. Although in rare cases, it has been known through research that it can be transmitted through transplants. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health advises the public to avoid outside activities from dusk to dawn, particularly because the mosquitoes are very active at that time. To prevent exposure, residents should apply a mosquito repellent that has DEET in it. Unless you have an infant that's under 2 months old, you would not use insecticide, any kind of insect spray. And certainly in children, you can use insect repellent, but use it with a concentration 30% DEET, not any higher than that. Promethazine can be used on clothes and on shoes, but it should not be used on children under the age of 3. And it certainly should not be used on your bare skin. When going outside from dusk to dawn, I'm sure we've all heard this, but it bears repeating. It's important that you not only use the insecticide, the insect repellent, I should say, but that you wear long sleeves, long pants, that you stay away from pools of water. So if you have any still water on your property, it would be important that you get rid of that. Also, have you had screens on your house, it would be important that they're secure and also that they don't have holes in them. So a lot of things to think of. And as of the taping of this program, which is August 29th, there is aerial spraying going on from dusk till 4:30 in the morning, not only in Kingston, but in Carver, Halifax, Middleborough, Plimpton, Rochester, and Wareham. The next thing I would like to do is tell you about a fundraiser for the homeless. It's being sponsored by Yoga 6 in Kingston, which is located at 182 Summer Street. It is on the 13th of September from 6 to 7:15. There's a $25 donation. And again, this goes towards Yoga Flow, which is a cause in support of Hearts for the Homeless. Next, I'd like to share with all of you excerpts from a book that I recently read. It's called The Book of Hope, A Survival Guide for Trying Times, and it's been written by Jane Goodall, the famous environmentalist, and Douglas Abrams. Quote, "As you all know, we're going through hard times. There's armed conflict in many parts of the world, racial and religious discrimination, hate crimes, terrorist attacks, a political swing in the far right, fueling demonstrations and protests that are all too often becoming violent. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening and fomenting anger and unrest. Democracy is under attack in many countries. Following the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, it continues to cause much suffering and death, loss of jobs, and economic chaos around the world. And the climate crisis is an even greater threat to our future, indeed to our lives. What I have found, if you talk with family or friends, and just people out in the community, there are growing numbers of people who are feeling lost, hopeless in our society. They're devastated by cruelty and injustice, having suffered in so many ways. They've lost faith in themselves and in humanity and in society. And yet hope has never been more desperately needed. So with that, I've invited our beacon of hope for Kingston, Reverend Emily Bruce, who is the pastor of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Kingston. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me, Janet. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. First off, what do you see as hope?
What is hope? That's a big question. Well, I think I want to start by telling you what hope isn't. And one of the things I think is really true is hope is not the same thing as optimism. How many times does someone tell you, "Oh, everything's just going to work out. Don't worry. Don't fret. Stop fretting about it. Everything's going to be fine." That's someone trying to get you to be optimistic. That's someone who, optimism has its place, but it's all about pushing away the negative and just kind of maybe blindly believing that everything's going to be fine. Hope is different. Hope is a deeper foundational truth that we can all build upon. Hope is something that tells us this is the reality that I'm facing and how can I help make it better. It's about going towards the problem versus, I think, trying to push it away. So that's one truth about hope that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And in the world we're living in right now, it is very, very easy to be hopeless because everywhere we turn, there are problems, like that litany of issues that you just read from the book. And it can feel overwhelming in that none of us feels like none of us alone can fix all the problems of the world. So therefore, it's very easy to slide into hopelessness. But hope teaches you that everyone has a part to play, including you, including me, including everyone. So once we can figure out what that part is, we can help turn the tide away from hopelessness and towards hope. That's my prayer anyway.
What do you see as hopelessness? What would be a definition of hopelessness?
Hopelessness for me it's despair. It's wanting to give up. It's feeling overwhelmed and feeling that the problems are too big. And despair this might sound counterintuitive, but despair is easy. It's very easy to give up. It's very easy to say, well, nothing I do matters. I can't affect change. I can't make anything better. So I'm just going to get on social media, or I'm just going to sit down and give up. And no one likes to do that, but it's very easy to do that. And so that's what hopelessness is to me. It's believing that we have no power within ourselves to do anything remotely positive, and therefore just giving up the whole ballgame.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about this earlier, but I guess this is one of my biases about people working from home, that it can be extremely isolating.
Yes.
And lack of community. And as you keep emphasizing that is just so crucial in feeling hopeful and healing ourselves as to what, through other people, that is contagious.
Yes.
Feelings are contagious.
Yes, loneliness is the number one growth factor in hopelessness, is feeling like you're alone. Because in our society, as Vivek Murthy, our Surgeon General, is talking about all the time, there is an epidemic of loneliness in our world, not just in America, across the world. And believing that we can be connected through social media and online only kinds of relationships makes it worse. So hope lives and grows and thrives in community when you're connected to those who believe the same as you, those who give you hope, like the people that when you're in their presence you feel better. That's the key, because none of us are going to be able to do this by ourselves.
Right.
And so the more connected you are to actual physical people that you can talk to and be with, in my case as a pastor, worship with, but even if it's your pickleball club or your gardening club or your book club, or no matter who it is, but that feeling those connections, that's what allows hope to thrive and grow, because you start to believe that there is a reason to hope because of your connections with other people.
Other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, speaking of the Surgeon General, he came out in the last couple of weeks, you may have heard about it, stress in parents, and that it's very difficult to be a parent right now.
Yes.
With all that's going on in the world, and trying to explain that and run a household and get your children to school with all that going on, and also all of the technology that kids are working with, and
Yeah.
that it's very, very stressful for parents.
Very
and
stressful.
they're feeling isolated as well and lonely.
Yeah.
So another reason to work on creating hope and healing in our communities. And he had emphasized having parenting groups
Yeah.
so that parents can get together. And,
Again, it's that
energize.
connection, that community, that coming together to share your burdens and help and let others help you carry them while you're doing the same thing for them. That's what community is all about.
Right.
And I can't imagine how isolating it is for parents because their kids are in school, a lot of their kids are online, and they're seeing and hearing some of these things and coming back with questions that can feel almost impossible to answer. And so the more connected you are and the more you can demonstrate how those connections are important to your kids,
Right.
hopefully that you can teach them what it means to have hope and also help cement in them the foundational values you want them to have,
Right.
which can often feel at odds with what they're seeing online, what they might be hearing from other kids in school, and just hearing from society at large around us.
Right.
Yeah.
And starting young, because I know as a parent, that gets a point where the communication can really drop off as they become teenagers.
Yes.
So if you're having these conversations as
Yeah.
they're preteens
Yeah.
and work, hopefully they will be telling you what they're seeing,
Yeah.
what they're seeing and talking about with their friends.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the key there is to listen to them. I
Right.
mean, that's the number one key to all human relationships, but especially with your kids, listen to them. Don't judge them. Don't get overly in their presence nervous or scared about what they're seeing. Let them tell you. Let them tell you what they're going through, because the more you can foster that connection where they know it's safe to talk to you and it's safe to tell you things, that's how you're actually going to help them find their own way towards hope in the midst of all of this. So, and that's true for everybody. No matter what community you belong to or however many relationships you have, listen to each other.
Right.
Give each other the chance to speak what's on your heart and share, because so often what you're feeling, other people are feeling too. And how many times do you hear someone say something, you're like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who thought that. That kind of exchange is where hope starts to grow. That kind of exchange is where you're like, oh, I'm not really alone in this. And what can we do, since we both feel this way, how can we move forward and make a change?
Right.
And that's so true with kids. Oh my gosh, they want to believe, they want to know that you're there for them and with them, and that you'll help them figure it out. But they're the ones that have to figure it out.
Right.
That you're going to be with them in it, and
Right.
listening is the best way to do that.
Well, I was going to ask you, as a society, what can we do to foster hope? I mean, you've already answered some of that.
Yeah.
And that, the open communication and talking with fellow adults.
Yep. Yeah.
You should keep talking about cultivating community.
Yes.
So reaching out and finding people
Yes.
wherever that might be.
Yes.
And having open communication.
Yes.
Can you speak to some other measures?
Yeah, what I'll also say is, well, and specifically related to that, like, find your people. Find your, like, if you can't immediately think of a few people in your head that you can go to and bring problems to, that you can talk to, and that who will listen to you and offer you empathy. Like, if you don't have anyone that pops to mind, go find those people for yourself, and those are people that make you feel hope too. Not people who drag you down and only tell you everything is horrible and getting worse, but the people who lift you up, who see you and support you. So if you don't have those people, try to find those people. And the best way to do that is to be that person for somebody else. So that's one thing. The other thing I would add is that I talked before about how despair is easy. Hope is not. It's hard. It's a muscle. You have to work it out like any other physical muscle if you want to become strong. So what that means is it's work. You have to do it. You have to decide you're going to try to hope, and you're going to work on that. So what does that look like for you? And everybody has a different answer to that question, of course. But for me, it's being in community, being around those people that lift me up and make me feel like there's reason to hope in our world. And I, of course, do that with my congregation, because they're some of the most wonderful, loving, hope-filled people I know. But there's a lot of us out there, and we need to find each other. So find your people, and then you have to work on it. You have to consciously choose, I think, to have hope, to move towards whatever brings you hope, whatever gives you life, to consciously move towards that, and not let the despair and the hopelessness and the anger and the fear, because all of that is so present in all of our minds. Don't let that be the narrative. Don't let that take the driver's seat, to use another metaphor. You have to work it. It's a muscle. You got to work it. And the best way to work it out is in community with other people.
I'm trying to think, because I would think some people, I know, I like concrete examples. So I'm thinking, I don't know, giving to a charity, or being part of a social justice group, or advocating for whatever you think it might be, against gun violence. Any other examples you can offer?
All those are great examples. The key is to get close to it. It's not just to write a check and mail it off to some unknown office. I mean, those are wonderful things. If you can donate money, if you've got the wherewithal to donate towards the causes that you believe in, absolutely should. But one of the things, I'll give you a perfect example. So I'm on the board of the Matthew Mission Food Pantry, which is based in Taunton. And our church does does a monthly collection of food for the food pantry. And a couple months ago, I decided, I went to the board meetings and we collected food, but I wasn't actually showing up at the food pantry. I wanted to understand more what it was about. I wanted to feel more connected to this organization that I believe in and I support. So I started volunteering there once a month. They do twice a month distribution. And when I was there, they're like, "Oh, you're a minister. You're good with people. We're going to put you front and center, where you have to check everybody in and take their names and get their information and tell them what to do." And so, I'm used to being put in the front to greet people, so that's okay. And I absolutely love it. Every time I go there, it fills me with such hope, because I actually get to meet the people who are being served by this food pantry. I get to meet their kids, I get to play with their kids, and I get to see this tiny little organization on this tiny little shoestring budget that's having a real measured effect on people's lives. And it's not changing the world, it's not feeding all the hungry people in the world, but for those people that show up, it makes a huge difference. And I'm starting to form relationships with some of the clients that come through. I know their name, they know my name, and it may sound small, but it has had an enormous effect on my own sense of hope, my own sense of being a part of something bigger than me and doing something, however small, that actually helps heal the world.
Right.
And that's what I want everyone to figure out for themselves. What is the something you can do, because you can't do everything, but what's the something that makes you feel like you're doing your part to help heal the world?
Exactly.
And whatever it is, picking up trash, walking dogs at the shelter, working at a food pantry, and anything and everything that makes sense to you, that feeds you, is what's going to feed the world.
And obviously, if we all do that, if everybody could do something, that obviously it would be a much better world. And I think the fact that you mentioned that, and certainly the outpouring for the immigrants that came to the town when they came close to 2 years ago now, and how many of them have moved on and done very well. That was a wonderful activity. That's another thing, and I'm glad you mentioned your volunteer work. There's a lot of good stuff going on out in the community, and unfortunately, we don't hear a lot of the good stuff.
Exactly.
And I think that needs more promotion.
It does. And those opportunities are out there. You got to go look for them. Right. But the culture of volunteerism has declined a lot over the decades, but there's still plenty of wonderful organizations out there that need support. And there's a lot of people doing a lot of really good work out there that are actually meeting the needs of people in our community and surrounding communities. So if that's something that feeds you, that you're interested in, go seek out those opportunities, because they're out there. People need help. And it's helping others is the number one way to help yourself.
Absolutely. So yes, we all have a role to play in this. And I think, for me, that's one of the big takeaways. And that we all seek our own community, to be part of a community that can support us. Any other things you'd like to say as a wrap up?
I think that the other thing I want to say is that people who've come before us have been here before. The world, we did not invent all the problems of the world that we're witnessing right now. Generations upon generations upon generations of humans have endured innumerable hardships and war and strife and division and acrimony, and so we're not unique. And I say that because that gives me hope in our long game, that this too shall pass. This is a temporary season of all of our lives that will not stay this way forever. And that's what gives me hope too, is because I have to remember that, like the seasons change, the world changes, the world's continuing to evolve forward. And that gives me hope, because there's that famous quote, that everyone attributes to Martin Luther King was actually said by a Unitarian minister. The moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Everybody knows that quote. What I like to say about that quote is the arc bends towards justice because we bend it. And generations, all of our ancestors, all of the people who've come before us have been bending that arc for hundreds and hundreds of years. So what can we do to do our part to bend it as well?
Exactly.
Yeah.
One perfect way to end. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And just stay safe, stay healthy, and we all need to do better at healing ourselves.